guys, so today we're at the prosthetic doctor's appointment. This is Dennis. Say hi, Dennis.
Hi.
He's gonna discuss how he makes prosthetics for us today. So here's Sir Dennis Epping.
How are you doing? It's really a long discussion on how we make prosthetics, but long story made short, we'll talk about Ivy for all intents and purposes. When I first saw Ivy, she was a new amputee, and with that said, we made her first prosthetic socket. That's the part that interfaces with her residual limb. Do you want to show your limb?
This is a socket.
This is a socket.
This is obviously my limb.
Yeah. So this is her limb, and imagine that after surgery, it's very swollen. It's going to change shape and size as she heals, as she weight bears through the prosthesis, as she becomes more active. Some of the residual muscle tone, because of that, the muscles will change shape. So her limb is actually dynamically changing, at least minimally for the first year. Some people it's shorter, other people it's longer, depending on what other kind of comorbidities they might have. If they're diabetic, they might be on certain medications that affect the limb volume, which can change. So with Ivy, we had first seen her to measure her limb to fit her with a liner, which she wears against her skin.
This is a liner.
And they're made out of different materials, but they're almost like, most of them are silicone, and they're kind of gelatinous with different durometers. But they protect the skin. She rolls it up onto her residual limb.
You guys have seen me do this a million times. But
yeah, there's no air gaps in it. And we got to pay attention to how that liner's fitting, because sometimes, again, as I said, as the limb is changing shape and size, the liner might become possibly too big, where there's gapping between the liner and limb, and that can cause problems. So we monitor that. We see the amputee a lot in the beginning because their limb is going to change so much. We got to maintain a good fit. Otherwise, other problems can occur for them. So with Ivy, her limb is stable. Her first prosthesis was made out of a different material than this. This is carbon graphite. Her first socket was made out of a thermoplastic version of this, which...
It's in your office.
I can go grab.
You'll go grab it. We can talk until then. So yeah, I call it a plastic socket. He has a special name for it that I can never ever remember, even when he's just said it, which is fine, no big deal. But this is what the original socket was created as.
So that's Ivy's, first socket, or similar to her first socket. It's actually made out of a thermoplastic that is very durable, for short-term use. Meaning some patients can wear this for up to a year as long as they don't have weight limits that are beyond the design capabilities or the engineering specs of the strength of the plastic. But for the most part, that's a very durable plastic that I can see through to monitor the fit. And I can actually heat it to change the shape of it. So as her limb's changing, I can keep it well-fitting up to a point, So with her, she wore that for the first 6 months or so?
Year.
Yeah. Was it a year?
It was the first year.
Okay. So for the first year, she was in the socket like that. At which point, we had made so many adjustments to it, we decided, the fit is not optimal. And her limb, we had been monitoring the shape and size, taking measurements throughout the whole process. Every time we saw her, we would monitor that. But her limb eventually became stable in its shape and size, so we decided to build her a new socket
which is
that fits her
fiber
intimately.
with the blade foot.
Yeah. But prior to fitting this carbon fiber socket, we fit something similar to her first temporary prosthesis.
Except
almost identical to that, but in this instance, for semantics,
we expanded the inside so that now that it has a bubble sort of figure in the bottom, when I walk, what's left of my leg isn't slamming and grinding into the bottom of this socket. So this is a bubble socket too. So yes, my leg goes completely in, but this is so small that my knee won't be jamming and grinding at the bottom so that, my leg gets bothered. It definitely helps with phantom pain.
Yeah, so Ivy walked in, when we casted her for this socket, she walked around on this for a little while. It's called a check socket, or it can be called a temporary prosthetic socket. So her first one was categorized as a temporary prosthetic socket that she learned how to walk in while her limb was changing shape. When we decided to build her a new socket or a definitive prosthesis, because her limb is pretty stable in its shape and size, we cast her with fiberglass to get a mold of her leg. It's filled with plaster. Then we strip that fiberglass mold off, and then we have what is called a positive model of her residual limb. Then we modify it. We do some, sculpting to her mold the way we want it, to relieve areas where we don't want pressure and to tighten areas where we do want to apply pressure, which is prosthetic design. So she walked around in this check socket that we first made out of a heat moldable thermoplastic that actually comes in a sheet form. We bake it in an infrared oven. And then the mold is actually upside down like that, and we take this sheet of plastic that's in a square shape in a frame, and we call it bubble forming. We actually pull it down and pull it over the mold, and then it vacuum forms. We cut it off. We install her lock mechanism right here. That's what suspends it. There's a little hole in the bottom of it. You can see that. There's a little serrated pin on the bottom of her liner that goes into that mechanism, which locks it.
This goes in this.
Yeah. And it locks. It ratchets on there. The release button to take it off is right there. She presses that button to disengage the pin and slide out of it. I don't know if you can see that little serration there, moving in and out. That's it.
That's where it locks.
That's what grabs onto that serrated pin. That's how she suspends the prosthesis so it doesn't fall off. Unless she inadvertently hits that little button against something that can make it fall off. Thus why we have on her new leg a semi-recessed button. So she doesn't accidentally hit that.
When it's out like this, it sometimes gets caught on clothing and stuff.
So when we knew we were satisfied with the fit of this and very happy with it, because I can adjust this I can't adjust, we took this and we poured it with liquid plaster again to get a copy of the mold. And then this came off that mold. We fabricated our final prosthesis, which is much lighter. It's made out of carbon fiber. It's more durable. It's meant for long-term use. Okay.
I don't think I'm allowed to get another prosthetic for like 3 more years now. Unless, of course, I damage this in such a way. It's
based on medical necessity, so there's a whole bunch of rules that apply to that. So that's not necessarily true. But for all intents and purposes, if Ivy stayed the same and her weight stayed the same and her activity and she didn't break anything, we can't just replace it on a whim. But we see her routinely for follow-up to make sure everything's fitting well. Her liners don't last forever that she wears on her limb. She gets 2 of those a year because they get old, they get stretched, they get dirty.
They get scratched.
And they don't fit as well as a new liner does. They're not as comfortable. And the liner actually provides a lot of shear. And when you think about when your leg's on the ground and you go to turn, we pivot. And our foot absorbs some of that motion, and our knee and our hip. With Ivy, all that stress is going right into the residual limb when this foot's on the ground. So when we're doing those kind of motions and activities, which are normal everyday walking and standing, the liner actually has some shear properties to it, so that the liner gel thickness shears instead of it going directly to her skin. That could cause irritation and possible sore. That, being a diabetic, you don't want to get a sore because it takes excessively long to heal, possibly, which could also possibly lead to an infection. And infections are not good because they could possibly lead to further amputation. Ivy does not want to become an above-the-knee amputee, right, Ivy?
No, that would make it a lot harder. Way harder.
Ivy has learned the whole process of what it feels like to be in a well-fitting prosthesis, which is very important. She also knows or has a distinction of when it's not feeling good.
So let's say like Dennis or Jonathan, who also messes with because Dennis educated him on how to attach these to my legs my fake
different
legs.
prosthetic feet
Yeah.
that she has.
So I can feel everything within this residual leg now. So if Jonathan makes it above this line, it doesn't feel even, meaning my legs are uneven. Before the amputation, I never really felt the difference between my legs, but now I do. I know that's weird. I definitely felt it after I got my prosthetic because I had even legs for the first time in 28 years of my life. Now I'm 29, but we lie and say I'm 27. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm 26.
26. Okay, what made you want to be a prosthetic creator, Dennis?
I was a mechanical engineer. I got into the field because I had didn't want to be an engineer anymore, and so there's some other steps that happened after that. I liked the engineering design process. I did not like being in a cubicle dealing with other engineers. They're generally very introverted people that, there's not a lot of fun, interactive communication with that group of engineers that I worked with. So I wanted to get involved with more of the ability to communicate between the engineers and maybe the marketing people that said, here is the widgets that, people want to buy. I know you want to build these widgets, engineers, but our market research says they don't want to buy them, so we're going to scrap this project and we're going to put you on a new project because this is what we think people want. So I was more one of those people that would be able to communicate with the business people and the engineering people. So I went back to get my MBA. But when I got out of school in 1993, most of you won't even know what happened in 1993, but it was a bad time for people that are MBAs. It was a bad time for engineers. It was bad times for people coming out of law school. The only people that were getting jobs were people that had computer engineering or computer science degrees, because that was just before the dot-com bubble. All right, and those were people being hired. Our economy was not doing so well at the time, so it was very difficult to find a job anywhere. And I ended up doing some volunteer work in this field because my girlfriend at the time was a physical therapist. So I had a little bit of working knowledge with her experiences working with amputees, and I thought it would be an interesting thing to pursue. So with that said, I spent another 4 years in college.
And
a lot more debt.
What's your favorite part about being a prosthetic doc?
I like I'm a triathlete. I'm very active. I've been skiing my whole life as well. I race cross country in both classic and skate skiing, and I'm an alpine downhill racer in college. So I'm a very active outdoor individual, and I rely on the ability to have good legs to do all that. So for me, restoring the ability of somebody to walk again is huge. It touches my heart when somebody that doesn't comprehend that they're going to be able to walk again once they've suffered from limb loss. They don't really get it that they're going to walk again until they get to the point of getting their first prosthesis and walking again. And then it takes a while to learn how to walk well again. It's constant practice, and to be able to get back to the things they want to do that they once did. So I get to see that process all the way through for people. And it's exciting to see that. The hardest part about what I do is dealing with the insurance or the payers that decide, we don't want to pay for this level of good technology that is going to help your patient walk better. I mean, they don't even acknowledge that part. I may know they're going to do better with a certain kind of technology, but they may be unwilling to approve it for the patient. That's the part that's really difficult to deal with, is knowing that, the insurance is dictating the level of quality of care that you're going to get these days.
So if you have shit insurance, you basically get a shit leg. If you have good insurance, you get a carbon fiber leg. That's amazing.
So,
I have a friend who's on Medicaid who she's a bilateral amputee. She's above the knee on her left side and below the knee on her right side. She's unmedicated due to her disability. She has lupus and a bunch of other medical issues. So her first 2 prosthetics didn't even fit her properly. And she just recently got 2 new limbs with a company called Prosthetics in Motion. So that was cool. I think Dennis also likes his job because he gets to socialize with people and make new friends and see us succeed.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
True enough. It is a social, and everybody's different. I'm not designing 10,000 or whatever, 100,000 widgets that are all the same thing. Everybody has unique requirements. Everybody is different. Everything I do is different in some level or some manner. It requires some thought and care on my behalf to do the right thing for the patient by interviewing them about what types of activities they do, what are their goals and aspirations. So there's a lot to it in order to do it well, and I think there's a lot of people in the field that might not do it as well as they should be doing. And that goes with anything, any aspect of healthcare, quite honestly, that I've seen.
All right, thanks for making this video for us, Dennis.
You're welcome.
All right, bye guys. I'll make a video, I guess, when I come up with another idea.